Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku had a Wolverine Quirk the animal, and it's a mutation quirk and he is an aggressive, and he can transform into a Wolverine but much bigger and stronger, and he is afraid of nothing and the only drawback to his quirk is his temper and give Izuku regeneration? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world is not built on equality. That was a lesson Izuku Midoriya learned not at the age of 4, but at the precise moment his bones broke from the inside out. Most children remember their quirk awakening as a moment of wonder, a floating toy, a spark of light from a fingertip, a sudden burst of speed. For Izuku, it was the sensation of burning agony, the scent of copper, and the terrifying, intoxicating realization that he was no longer the prey. Muzafu General Hospital 10 years ago. The fluorescent lights of the doctor's office buzzed with a sound that seemed to drill directly into Izuku's skull. He was 4 years old, sitting on the edge of the examination table, swinging his legs. He looked small, fragile even, with messy green curls and wide, hopeful eyes. Beside him, Inko Midoriya nervously twisted the strap of her purse. "Mrs. Midoriya," the doctor said, adjusting his glasses. He didn't look at the clipboard. He looked at the X-rays illuminated on the wall. "I assume you're here because Izuku hasn't shown signs of fire breathing or telekinesis?" "Yes, Doctor," Inko said, her voice trembling slightly. "All the other children in his kindergarten class have started manifesting their quirks." Is something wrong?" The doctor tapped the X-ray. It showed Izuku's hands and forearms. But there was something wrong with the skeletal structure. Within the forearms, nestled between the radius and ulna, were long, dense foreign objects. The old theory used to be that the presence of an extra toe joint indicated a lack of evolution, and thus, a lack of a quirk, the doctor explained, his tone clinical, almost cold. "Izuku doesn't have that extra joint. But he has something else. A mutation. A dormant, but rapidly developing, variance in his genetic code." He turned to look at the boy. Izuku blinked, the buzzing of the lights sounding louder, like a swarm of hornets. "He has a quirk," the doctor stated. "But it's not an emitter like yours, or a simple fire breath like his father's. It's a total physiological overhaul. A mutant-type quirk of the highest order. His bone density is already 3 times that of a normal adult. His healing factor, based on the blood sample we took, is actively fighting off dead cells faster than we can count them." Inko blinked. "Healing factor? Bone density? It's a primal quirk, Mrs. Midoriya," the doctor warned, leaning forward. "We classify these as atavistic predator mutations. He isn't just going to have a power. He is going to be different. Instinctual, aggressive. The body changes the mind to suit the weapon." Izuku didn't understand the big words. He just felt an itch. A deep, maddening itch inside his knuckles. "Can I be a hero?" Izuku asked, his voice small. The doctor looked at the boy, then at the mother. "Physically? He'll be strong enough to be anything he wants. But you need to watch his temper, Mrs. Midoriya. Animals don't understand the concept of restraint." The playground 2 weeks later. The air smelled like wet sand and pine needles. To Izuku, the smell was overwhelming. For the last week, the world had become too loud, too bright, too smelly. He could hear the heartbeat of the pigeons sitting on the slide. He could smell the chewing gum in Katsuki Bakugo's pocket. He stood between Bakugo and a weeping boy on the ground. "Get out of the way, Deku," Bakugo sneered, small explosions popping in his palms. "Unless you want to get hurt too." Usually Izuku would tremble. Usually, he would cry. He felt the impulse to cry, somewhere deep in his chest, a remnant of the boy he was 2 weeks ago. But the impulse was crushed by something hotter, something redder. A growl started in Izuku's throat. It wasn't a child's imitation of a dog. It was a low, vibrating rumble that shook his small ribcage. "Leave him alone, Kaken," Izuku said. He didn't stutter. Bakugo paused, confusing the lack of fear for arrogance. "You think you're tough because the doctor said you have a quirk? You're still just a pebble on the side of the road." Bakugo lunged, a right hook aimed at Izuku's shoulder, an explosion readied. Izuku didn't think. He didn't plan. His vision narrowed into a tunnel of red. The itch in his hands became a scream. Sicked. 3 6-inch bone claws tore through the skin between Izuku's knuckles. Blood sprayed onto the sand, Izuku's blood. The pain was blinding, white-hot and searing, but Izuku didn't scream. He roared. He swung his arm in a blind, pharaoh arc. Bakugo's eyes went wide. He threw himself backward, instinct screaming at him that this wasn't a game. The bone claws missed Bakugo's face by a millimeter, slicing through the air with a terrifying whoosh. They connected with the wooden post of the jungle gym behind Bakugo. With a sound like a gunshot, the solid wood splintered and sheared apart. 3 deep, clean gashes appeared in the timber. Silence descended on the playground. Izuku stood there, breathing heavily. His hands were covered in blood where the claws had exited his skin, but even as the other children watched in horror, the skin was already knitting tight around the bone. Bakugo sat on the sand, staring up at Izuku. For the first time in his life, the explosive boy felt a chill run down his spine. He wasn't looking at a victim, he was looking at a predator that had just realized its own strength. Izuku looked at his claws, dense, white bone, sharp as razors. He looked at Bakugo. I said, Izuku growled, his voice dropping an octave. Leave him alone. Present day 10 years later, Aldera Junior High. The classroom was silent, save for the scratching of graphite on paper. Izuku Midoriya sat in the back row, slouching low in his chair. At 14, he was already imposing. He wasn't the tallest in the class, but he was the widest. His shoulders were broad, stretching the fabric of his black school uniform. The buttons were always struggling. His muscles were dense, compacted like steel cables under his skin. He kept his hands in his pockets. He always did. It was a courtesy to the people around him. His sense of smell was a curse in a room full of hormonal teenagers. He could smell the fierce sweat of the kid in the front row who hadn't studied. He could smell the sickeningly sweet perfume of the girls whispering in the corner. And overpowering everything else, he could smell the burnt sugar and nitroglycerin radiating from the seat in front of him. So, the teacher droned on, slamming a stack of papers onto his desk. I assume you all want to be heroes, right? The class erupted into cheers, everyone showing off their minor telekinesis or stretching fingers. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks, the teacher said, waving a hand. But no power usage in school. Now let's see. Bakugo, you're aiming for UA High, correct? Bakugo leaned back, feet on his desk. Don't lump me in with these extras, Teach. I'm the only one here with the stuff to make it to the big leagues. I'll surpass All Might and become the top hero, the class murmured, annoyed but too scared to argue. Oh, the teacher added, glancing at his clipboard. And it says here Midoriya is also applying to UA. The room went deathly silent. It wasn't the mocking silence that usually accompanied the quirkless. It was the silence of a group of hikers realizing they had just stepped on a twig in a bear's cave. Bakugo stiffened. He slowly took his feet off the desk and turned around. Deku, Bakugo said. His voice was low, dangerous. But there was a tension in his jaw that hadn't been there when he yelled at the others. Izuku opened one eye. His iris was a deep, pharaoh green, the pupil slightly more elliptical than a human's should be. What? You think you can stand in the same ring as me? Bakugo hissed, sparks popping in his hands. You're a mutation freak. You can't save people. You just break things. Izuku sighed. The sound was like a tire deflating. He sat up, the wood of his chair creaking under his density. He was heavy, nearly 250 pounds of dense bone and muscle packed into a 5 feet 6 inches frame. I'm applying Katsuki, Izuku said flatly. He stopped calling him Kakin years ago. If you have a problem with it, file a complaint. Or make me stop. The challenge hung in the air. Bakugo's hands smoked. He stood up, kicking his chair back. You wanna go, Mutt? Izuku stood up. He didn't do it quickly. He unfolded himself. Even though they were the same height, Izuku seemed to loom. A low rumble started in his chest, a physiological response he couldn't control when adrenaline spiked. It sounded like a chainsaw idling. Sit down, Izuku said. The authority in his voice was absolute. Before you embarrass yourself. Bakugo grit his teeth, his pride warring with his survival instinct. He knew. He remembered the scars on the trees in the woods. He remembered the time Izuku took a baseball bat to the ribs during PE and just laughed. TCH. Bakugo scoffed, sitting back down aggressively. Whatever. Just don't cry when you die in the entrance exam. Izuku sat back down, the red tint fading from the edges of his vision. He rubbed his knuckles. The skin there was thick, scarred tissue, white lines crossing horizontally where the claws came out. Control, he told himself. Do not eat the classmates. The underpass. School ended with the usual chaos. Izuku grabbed his yellow backpack and walked out, ignoring the whispers. That's the mad dog of Aldera. Don't look him in the eye. I heard he ate a stray cat once. Izuku rolled his eyes. He loved cats. They were the only things that understood the concept of personal space. He took the long way home, preferring the damp coolness of the underpass to the crowded streets. The sunlight hurt his eyes today. His senses were dialed up to 11. He could hear the hum of electricity in the power lines above the city. He walked into the tunnel. Shadows wrapped around him, comforting and cool. He stopped. His nose twitched. Rot. Sewage. Decay. Malice. Izuku spun around, dropping into a crouch instantly. From the manhole cover behind him, a wave of dark green sludge erupted. It formed a towering, fluid shape with manic, bulging eyes. A medium-sized skin suit. The villain gurgled, his voice wet and distorted. You'll do. You look strong. Just hold still, kid. It'll only hurt for 45 seconds. The villain lunged. Most kids would scream. Most kids would run. Izuku Midoriya stepped forward. Get the hell away from me! Izuku roared. As the sludge enveloped him, trying to force its way down his throat, Izuku didn't suffocate. He got angry. And when Izuku got angry, the beast woke up, snicked. 3 adamantine dense bone claws, each a foot long, erupted from the backs of his hands. The villain didn't expect the prey to bite back. Izuku slashed outward. His claws acted like propellers, shredding the liquid body of the villain. Gah! What is this? The villain screamed as the boy inside him began to thrash with the strength of a hydraulic press. Izuku held his breath. He didn't need much oxygen. His lungs were efficient, evolved for endurance hunting. He swung his arms wildly, his claws tearing through the slime. He felt resistance, an eye, a tooth, and slashed harder. Let me go! Izuku shouted, the sound muffled by the sludge but vibrating with fury. He planted his feet. His shoes cracked the concrete. With a heave of pure, unadulterated muscle, Izuku grabbed the liquid mass of the villain and pulled. He ripped himself free, gasping for air, coated in slime. But he didn't retreat. The sludge villain reformed, looking shocked. You little brat! I'll kill you! Izuku wiped the slime from his eyes. His pupils were slits. His lips curled back, revealing canines that had elongated, sharper than a human's. Come and try! Izuku snarled. He crouched on all fours, his stance bestial. The muscles in his back rippled, tearing the back of his school uniform. Dark hair began to sprout rapidly along his forearms and cheeks. He launched himself at the villain. Texas smash! The wind pressure hit them like a freight train. Izuku was blown back, skidding across the pavement, his claws carving deep grooves into the concrete to slow his momentum. The sludge villain was obliterated, scattered into droplets by the sheer force of the punch. Standing at the entrance of the tunnel was a mountain of a man. Blonde hair, blinding smile, casting a shadow that promised safety. Do not fear! All Might boomed. For I am. He paused. He looked at the scene. He saw the villain, scattered and dazed. And he saw the boy. Izuku was panting heavily, saliva dripping from his chin. His claws were fully extended, dripping with sludge. His eyes were wild, dilated, focused on the scattered remains of the villain as if he wanted to finish the job. He looked less like a victim and more like a predator interrupted in the middle of a meal. All Might's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Here. Izuku stood up slowly. He shook his hands, and with a wet schluck sound, the claws retracted back into his skin. The wounds healed instantly, leaving only faint white scars. The hair on his face receded. You're late, Izuku said, wiping his mouth. He didn't sound awestruck. He sounded annoyed. I almost had him. All Might blinked, stepping forward to scoop the villain's remains into soda bottles. Young man, that was dangerous. You should not engage a villain. You should run to safety. I don't run, Izuku muttered, picking up his backpack. It was covered in slime. Great. Mom's going to kill me. All Might finished bottling the villain. He looked at the boy again. He sensed the profound, raw power radiating from him. But there was something unsettling about it. It was cold. Violent. Are you injured? All Might asked. No, Izuku said. Regeneration. I see. Well, I must be off to turn this guy in. Stay out of trouble, kid! All Might leaped into the air, vanishing into the sky. Izuku watched him go. He took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the hero. It smelled like ozone, American soap, and blood. He's hurt, Izuku whispered to the empty tunnel. He tapped his nose. Smells like he's dying. Tatooine Station. The incident. Izuku didn't go straight home. The adrenaline was still pumping through his veins, making his skin itch. He needed to walk it off. If he went home now, his mother would see the dilated pupils and the shredded uniform and have a panic attack. He found himself wandering toward the shopping district. Smoke billowed into the sky. Sirens wailed. His feet moved on their own. When he arrived, the scene was chaos. Fire was everywhere. The heroes, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady, were standing around, helpless. I can't get close. My quirk isn't suited for this. Where is All Might? Izuku pushed through the crowd. He didn't say excuse me. He just walked, and people instinctively moved out of his way, sensing the predator in their midst. He reached the police tape. The sludge villain had escaped. And he had a new hostage. Explosions ripped through the air. The fires burned hotter. Izuku saw him. Bakugo. Trapped in the sludge, mouth covered, eyes wide with panic. The villain was using Bakugo's quirk to create a perimeter of fire, keeping the heroes at bay. Izuku froze. Logically, he should wait. That's what the pros were doing. Waiting for someone with the right quirk. But then, Izuku's eyes locked with Bakugo's. Bakugo wasn't asking for help. His eyes were screaming. Not in fear of death, but in sheer humiliation and rage. Izuku felt a snap in his brain, the drawback. That's what the doctor called it. Hyper-aggressive response to threat stimuli. Most people have a fight-or-flight response. Izuku only had fight. And seeing his rival, the only person he respected enough to fight, being suffocated by some sewer trash, it made him see red. Gray-ah-ah-wah! The roar that ripped from Izuku's throat shattered windows in the nearby shops. The crowd screamed as Izuku vaulted over the police barrier. Hey! Kid! Stop! Death Arms shouted, reaching out. Izuku ignored him. He hit the ground running. He didn't run like a human sprinter. He ran low, his center of gravity dropped, his arms pumping. Snicked. Snicked. The claws popped. 6 blades of bone, gleaming in the firelight. You again? The sludge villain shrieked. Stay back or I'll snap his neck. Let him go. Izuku bellowed. He leaped. He soared through the ring of fire, the flames licking at his skin. His skin blistered and burned, but before he even landed, the burns were peeling away, replaced by fresh pink skin. He landed on the villain's main mass. This time, Izuku didn't hold back. He stabbed both hands into the sludge, finding purchase on the villain's semi-solid core. He roared, his face distorting, his jaw unhinging slightly as his canine teeth grew 2 inches long. He bit the villain. He literally bit the sludge, tearing a chunk of the fluid away and spitting it out. Get off! Izuku screamed, slashing wildly. He was a whirlwind of violence. He severed the tendril covering Bakugo's mouth. Bakugo gasped, coughing up smoke. Deku? Shut up and blast him! Izuku yelled, his voice sounding guttural, like gravel in a blender. Izuku grabbed the sludge covering Bakugo's arm and ripped it away with sheer brute strength. Bakugo didn't waste a chance. He aimed his free hand at the villain's eye. Boom! The explosion rocked the villain, loosening his grip. Izuku planted his feet on the villain's chest and grabbed Bakugo by the collar. Move! Izuku threw Bakugo, physically hurled him, out of the sludge and onto the pavement behind him. Now it was just Izuku and the villain. The villain reformed, towering over Izuku. I'm going to kill you, you little monster! Izuku stood his ground. He was breathing hard, smoke rising from his regenerating skin. He looked up, and a grin spread across his face. It wasn't a hero's smile. It was a feral baring of teeth. You can try, Izuku growled. He raised his claws, ready to charge again. He was ready to die. He was ready to kill. The bloodlust was singing in his ears, drowning out the screams of the crowd. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his shoulder. It was heavy. Reassuring. I really am pathetic, a deep voice rumbled. Izuku blinked, the red haze lifting slightly. He looked up. All Might stood there, steam rolling off his body. He wasn't smiling. He looked furious, at the villain, and at himself. I told you to stay safe, All Might said, his voice low. But I also said a hero can always break out of a pinch. All Might pulled back his fist. Izuku instinctively covered his ears and hunkered down, digging his claws into the asphalt to anchor himself. Detroit. Smash! The air pressure changed. The clouds above the city split. A tornado of wind blasted upward, scattering the sludge villain into atoms and extinguishing the fires in a single heartbeat. Rain began to fall from the disruption in the atmosphere. Izuku stood up, shaking the debris from his hair. His claws retracted. The adrenaline crash hit him like a physical weight. He stumbled, falling to one knee. The aftermath. The scolding was inevitable. Are you insane? Kamui Wood shouted, pointing a wooden finger at Izuku's chest. You could have gotten yourself killed. You could have gotten the hostage killed. That was reckless vigilante behavior. Death Arms crossed his massive arms. And that Quirk, kid, you were trying to butcher him. That's not how a hero acts. Izuku sat on the back of an ambulance, a blanket draped over his shoulders. He stared at the ground, his face blank. He wasn't listening. He was hungry. Regeneration burned a lot of calories. Meanwhile, the pros were praising Bakugo. That bravery. Those reflexes. You held out for so long, Izuku scoffed. Something to say, kid? Death Arms asked. Izuku looked up. His eyes were tired but sharp. You all stood there. You have quirks. You have licenses. But you stood there and watched a kid suffocate because the matchup wasn't right. He stood up, dropping the blanket. The only people who did anything were the ones without licenses. Maybe you should rethink who the real heroes are. He walked away. The heroes were too stunned by his audacity to stop him. Twilight. The walk home was quiet. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the street. Deku! Izuku stopped but didn't turn around. He heard the heavy footsteps running up behind him. Bakugo stopped a few feet away. He was panting, clutching his arm. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo yelled. His voice cracked. I could have handled it. I didn't need a damn feral freak like you saving me. Izuku turned slowly. You looked like you needed help, Izuku said calmly. I didn't. Bakugo insisted. He was shaking. Not from fear, but from the realization of how weak he had been. Don't think this changes anything. I'm still going to be the #1 hero. I won't lose to you. Good, Izuku said. It would be boring if you were weak. Bakugo stared at him, confused by the lack of mockery. He grunted, turned on his heel, and stomped away. Izuku sighed. Moron. He continued walking. But he didn't get far. I am here. All Might burst out of a side alley, sliding into a pose. Young man! I caught up to you. Izuku didn't jump. He just raised an eyebrow. You're fast. All Might laughed, but then suddenly, smoke erupted from his body. The muscular form deflated, shrinking down into a skeletal, gaunt man with sunken eyes. He coughed, blood spraying from his mouth. Izuku didn't scream. He sniffed the air. So that's what that smell was, Izuku noted. Old blood and failing organs. You're hurt bad. All Might wiped his mouth, looking surprised. You aren't shocked? I have enhanced senses, Izuku said, tapping his nose. I knew you were hurt the moment I met you under the bridge. Why are you showing me this? All Might sat down on the railing, looking weary. Because I misjudged you, young Midoriya. At the tunnel, I saw a beast. I saw violence. I thought you were just a thug with a powerful quirk. Izuku looked away, scuffing his shoe against the concrete. Most people do. But back there, All Might continued, his blue eyes piercing. When everyone else froze, you moved. You didn't think about the danger. You didn't think about the law. You just moved to save that boy. All Might stood up. Top heroes have stories about their early days, All Might said. And many of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku looked at his hands. He looked at the faint white scars on his knuckles. You have the heart of a hero, All Might said. Izuku felt a lump in his throat. It was the first time someone other than his mother had said that. However, All Might said, his tone shifting. It became serious. Stern. Izuku looked up. I possess a power, All Might began. A power passed down from generation to generation. One for all. Izuku's eyes widened. Passed down? Yes. And I am looking for a successor. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. Was this it? Was the number one hero going to choose him? All Might looked at Izuku. He looked at the dense muscle, the sharp eyes, the scars on his knuckles, and the way he held himself like a loaded gun. But All Might said softly, I cannot give it to you. The world stopped. What? Izuku whispered. Young man, All Might said, looking sad. You are already overflowing with power. Your cup is full. If I gave you this power, it would destroy you. Or worse, your anger would twist it into something terrible. Izuku clenched his fists. The claws threatened to pop. You think I'm a villain? No, All Might said firmly. I think you are a predator. And one for all requires a symbol of peace, not a symbol of fear. He placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. You can be a hero, young Midoriya. With your own power. But you must learn to tame the beast inside. You must learn that true strength isn't about how much you can hurt the enemy, but how much you can save the innocent. Until you learn that, I cannot trust you with my power. All Might patted his shoulder and began to walk away. Train hard, young man. I look forward to seeing what you become at UA. Izuku stood alone in the twilight. He felt the rejection burn in his chest. It was hotter than the sludge villain's slime. It was sharper than his own claws. Symbol of fear? Izuku looked at his hand. He flexed his fingers. Fine, Izuku growled, his voice rough. He turned toward the setting sun, his shadow stretching long and monstrous against the pavement. Keep your power, All Might. I don't need it. His eyes glowed with a feral green light. I'll become the top hero with my own claws. And I'll show you. I'll show all of you. He started to run. Not home. But to the beach. To the trash heap. He had training to do. If the world wanted a beast, he would give them the apex predator. The walk home from the bridge felt different than any walk Izuku Midoriya had ever taken. Usually, the streets of Muzidafu were filled with the ambient noise of a city winding down, cars humming, televisions glowing through apartment windows, the distant wail of sirens. But tonight, Izuku didn't hear the city. He heard the rush of blood in his own ears, a rhythmic, heavy thrumming that sounded like war drums. You have the heart of a lion, but the mind of a beast. All Might's words echoed in his skull, bouncing around and gathering weight with every repetition. A hero must save, not just slaughter. Izuku stopped at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. He looked down at his hands. They were trembling. Not from fear, and not from the cold evening air. They were trembling from a surplus of kinetic energy that had nowhere to go. The adrenaline from the sludge villain fight hadn't fully dissipated. His body was still running hot, his regeneration factor working overtime to repair micro-tears in his muscles and the burns on his skin. He clenched his fists. The skin over his knuckles was white, scar tissue stretched tight over the adamantine dense bone beneath. Save, not slaughter, Izuku muttered to himself, his voice a low rasp. Easy for you to say. You don't have something inside you scratching at the walls of your ribs, begging to be let out. The light changed. Izuku walked. He wasn't sad. That was the surprising part. For years, he had imagined that if All Might ever rejected him, he would be crushed. He would be the crying, stuttering mess everyone expected him to be, but the sadness wasn't there. In its place was a cold, hard resolve. It felt like a stone sitting in his gut. He didn't need one for all. He didn't need a quirk that broke your limbs just to use it. He had a quirk. He was a weapon. If All Might wouldn't polish that weapon, Izuku would sharpen it himself on the rough edge of the world. The Midoriya apartment. Izuku! Oh my god, you're filthy! Inko Midoriya was at the door the second the lock clicked. She had been pacing. Izuku could smell the anxious sweat and the faint scent of burnt cooking oil where she'd likely forgotten a pan on the stove in her worry. She rushed forward, her hands hovering over him, afraid to touch the soot and dried slime. I saw the news. The fires. The villain. Did you fight him again? Izuku stepped into the jankan and kicked off his red sneakers. They were ruined, the soles melted slightly. He looked at his mother. I'm fine, Mom, he said. His voice was steady. Grounded. Inko froze. She looked at his face. She was looking for the tears. She was waiting for the breakdown. But Izuku's eyes were dry. They were a vivid, piercing green, clear and focused. You're not hurt? She asked, her voice small. Regeneration, Izuku reminded her. He walked past her into the living room. I'm hungry. Is there meat? Inko blinked, thrown off by his calmness. Why, yes. I made katsudon. A lot of it. I know your metabolism spikes after incidents. Izuku sat at the table. He didn't slouch. He sat with a predator's posture, back straight, head up, scanning the room. When Inko placed the massive bowl of pork cutlet and rice in front of him, he didn't say itadakimasu. He just ate. He ate with a terrifying efficiency. He tore into the pork, his jaw working powerfully. He needed the protein. His bones were dense, his muscles were dense, and maintaining them took an absurd amount of calories. Healing took even more. Izuku? Inko sat opposite him, wringing her hands. Did you meet All Might? Izuku paused, a piece of pork halfway to his mouth. He chewed, swallowed, and set the chopsticks down. Yeah. I met him. And? Inko's eyes were wide with hope and fear. She knew how much the hero meant to him. Izuku looked at the calendar on the wall. 10 months until the UA entrance exam. He told me I couldn't be a hero, Izuku said flatly. Inko gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Oh, Izuku. I'm so sorry. Don't be, Izuku interrupted. He looked at his mother, and for a second, his expression softened. He said my power is too violent. He said I'm too much of a beast. He thinks I'd be a symbol of fear. Inko began to tear up. That's not true. You're a good boy. You save people. You saved that Bakugo boy today. I did, Izuku nodded. And I realized something, Mom. He stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. He walked over to the window and looked out at the city lights. All Might is wrong. He thinks a hero has to be a smiling statue. He thinks a hero has to be a symbol of peace that shines like the sun. Izuku turned back to her. A grin spread across his face, sharp, toothy, and wild. But when night comes, the sun goes down. And in the dark, you don't need a statue. You need a wolf. You need something that scares the monsters away. He walked over and kissed his mother on the forehead. I'm going to UA, Mom. And I'm going to do it my way. The Purge. That night, Izuku cleaned his room. For most of his life, his bedroom had been a shrine to All Might. Posters covering every inch of wallpaper, action figures on every shelf, limited edition bedsheets. It was the room of a fanboy, the room of a rabbit who wanted to be a lion. Izuku tore it all down. He ripped the posters from the walls. He boxed up the figures. He stripped the bed. He wasn't doing it out of spite. He didn't hate All Might. He respected the man's power. But he could no longer worship him. You don't worship the person who told you that your nature was wrong. By 2 a.m. the room was bare. The walls were plain white. The shelves were empty, save for a few dumbbells and a stack of notebooks. He sat on his bed shirtless. He looked at himself in the mirror on the wardrobe door. He was 14, but he looked 18. His neck was thick, corded with muscle. His trapezius muscles sloped aggressively toward broad shoulders. His chest was a slab of pectorals and scars. He looked at his hands. He focused, snicked. The claws emerged. They weren't just bone. They were an evolutionary masterpiece. The calcium density was so high they were harder than steel. The edges were naturally serrated on a microscopic level, self-sharpening every time they retracted against the sheath of bone in his forearms. Atavistic predator mutation, he whispered the doctor's diagnosis. Class Wolverine. He had spent years trying to suppress it. Years trying to be gentle, trying not to break pencils, trying not to growl when Bakugo yelled at him. He had tried to be a human. No more, Izuku whispered. He retracted the claws. He reached for his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. He flipped to the page on All Might. He stared at it for a long moment. Then, he ripped the page out, crumpled it into a ball, and threw it in the trash. He opened a fresh page. At the top he wrote, Subject Me, The Forest of Silence. The next morning was Saturday. Izuku didn't go to Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. He knew people went there to dump trash. It was open, exposed, and near the city. He needed isolation. He took the train to the edge of the prefecture, to the base of Mount Takoba. It was a dense, overgrown forest region that extended up into the mountain range. It was technically government land, restricted due to the rugged terrain and occasional wildlife sightings, but no one patrolled it. It was perfect. Izuku stood at the trailhead. He was wearing loose cargo pants, heavy combat boots he had bought at an army surplus store, and a tight gray tank top. He carried a heavy rucksack filled with water and protein bars. He stepped into the tree line. Instantly, the world changed. The smell of exhaust and concrete vanished, replaced by the heavy, damp scent of pine, decaying leaves, and wet earth. The noise of the city died, replaced by the rustle of wind in the canopy and the chittering of insects. Izuku took a deep breath. His nostrils flared. Deer. West 300 meters. Fox. East. Old scat, maybe 2 days. His senses expanded. In the city, his enhanced hearing and smell were a burden, a constant headache of overstimulation. Here they were tools. They were clarity. Okay, Izuku said to the trees. Let's see what this body can really do. He started to run. He didn't stick to the trail. He veered off into the undergrowth. He leaped over fallen logs, his movements fluid. He wasn't running like a jogger. He was running like an animal. He stayed low, using his arms to vault over roots, his center of gravity shifting constantly. He ran until his lungs burned. Then he ran some more. His regeneration factor cleared the lactic acid from his muscles almost as fast as it built up, allowing him to push past normal human endurance limits. He found a clearing near a rocky overhang. This would be his dojo. Step 1, Izuku grunted, dropping his bag. Strength. He walked over to a fallen tree trunk. It was a massive pine, easily weighing 400 pounds. The wood was damp and heavy. Izuku squatted next to it. He dug his fingers into the bark. He didn't use his claws. He used his grip strength. Up. He heaved. The veins in his neck bulged. His uniform shirt strained. The log lifted. He wrestled it onto his shoulder. The weight was crushing, driving his boots into the soft soil. He began to do squats. 1, 2, 3. You're too angry, he muttered to himself on the 10th rep. That's what he said? The anger blinds you. 11, 12. But anger is fuel, Izuku countered himself. If I don't get angry, I don't get strong. The trick isn't to stop the anger. It's to aim it. He did squats until his legs gave out. He dropped the log with a thud that shook the ground. He lay there, staring at the canopy, panting. He could feel his muscle fibers tearing and knitting back together, thicker, denser. Month 2, the red haze. School became a blur. Izuku stopped taking notes on other heroes. He stopped muttering. The change in his demeanor terrified his classmates more than his outbursts ever had. Before, he was a volatile, weird kid who sometimes snapped. Now, he was silent. He sat in his chair like a gargoyle. Bakugo noticed it the most. During lunch, Bakugo cornered him by the vending machines. Deku. Izuku popped the tab on a can of black coffee. He didn't look at Bakugo. Katsuki? Bakugo twitched. You've been disappearing on weekends. You smell like dirt and pine sap. What the hell are you doing? Training, Izuku said, taking a sip. Training for what? To fail? Bakugo sneered, though there was no real heat in it. He was probing. You think lifting rocks in the woods is going to help you beat me? Izuku finally looked at him. His eyes were dull, bored. I'm not trying to beat you, Katsuki. I'm trying to beat it. It? The thing that wants to eat you when you yell at me, Izuku said casually. Bakugo took a step back. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. Izuku smiled, a small, humorless quirk of the lips, and walked away. Back on the mountain, the training had escalated. Izuku stood in the clearing. He was shirtless now, despite the autumn chill. His body was covered in bruises that were fading in real time. The feral form, Izuku said aloud. This was the part of his quirk he feared. The claws were easy. The regeneration was passive. But the transformation, that was the demon. When his heart rate exceeded 200 BPM, or when his pain receptors were overloaded, his body attempted to adapt. It tried to become the perfect killing machine. Do it, he commanded himself. He closed his eyes. He thought about the sludge villain. He thought about the look in All Might's eyes when he said symbol of fear. He thought about every time Bakugo had burned him. He let the rage simmer. He fed it oxygen. Thump thump. Thump thump. His heart rate spiked. The adrenaline dumped into his system. Grr. The sound tore from his throat involuntarily. It started in his spine. A sickening crunching sound echoed in the clearing as his vertebrae elongated and thickened. Izuku fell to his hands and knees, gasping. Hold it, he gritted out. Control it. His skin stretched. His muscles swelled, ripping apart and rebuilding instantly with greater mass. Dark, coarse hair erupted along his spine and shoulders. His jaw ached as it pushed forward, his facial structure becoming more lupin, more predatory. He grew. He went from 5 feet 6 inches to 6 feet 0 inches in seconds. Then 6 feet 5 inches. The pain was exquisite. It felt like being pulled apart by horses. Izuku slammed his fist into the ground, shattering a rock. Ray-a-ra-waff! He stood up. He was hunched, his arms hanging low, almost to his knees. He was 7 feet tall now. His eyes were pure white, no pupils. He was a monster. A bipedal Wolverine made of muscle and hate. He looked at a tree. Destroy. He lashed out. His claws, now nearly a foot long, severed the tree trunk like it was paper. The tree toppled. Kill. Hunt. Feed. Izuku roared, slashing at the air. He was lost in the sauce. The red haze. Then a bird chirped. It was a small sound. A blue jay, startled by the falling tree. The sound pierced the haze. Izuku blinked. The white faded, his green irises returning. He looked at his hands, monstrous, hairy, deadly. No, he rasped. His voice was deep, distorted. I am in control. He forced his breathing to slow. It was a battle of will against biology. He visualized a cage. He visualized putting the wolf in the cage and locking the door. Slowly, agonizingly, his body began to shrink. Bones crunched back into place. The hair receded. Izuku collapsed onto the moss, naked and shivering. He curled into a ball. Again, he whispered, spitting out blood. Do it again. Month 6, density. Winter came to the mountain. Snow blanketed the trees. Izuku didn't stop. The cold was good. It forced his body to burn more fuel to stay warm, making his metabolism even more efficient. He was meditating under a freezing waterfall. It was a cliché, he knew, but the shock of the cold water helped him focus his mind. He stepped out of the water, steam rising from his skin. He walked over to a boulder he had been working on for weeks. It was the size of a small car. No claws, he told himself. He placed his hands on the rock. He dug his fingers into the stone. Not cutting it, but crushing it. His grip strength had reached a point where he could mold softer metals like clay. He lifted the boulder. His feet sank into the frozen earth. He began to walk. He carried the boulder up the slope. His legs burned. His back screamed. But he didn't stop. He reached the top of a ridge. He dropped the rock. He looked out over the forest. He could see Muzarufu in the distance, a grid of lights. I'm stronger, he said. But am I fast enough? He turned and looked at the drop. A sheer cliff face, about 100 feet down, filled with jagged rocks and protruding roots. Izuku grinned. He jumped. He didn't glide. He fell like a stone. He hit a protrusion, his shoulder crunching. Regenerate. He spun, digging his claws into the cliff face to slow his descent. Sparks flew as bone met granite. He used the momentum to swing, launching himself off the wall and grabbing a tree branch. The branch snapped. He fell again, tucking and rolling. He hit the bottom with a crater-forming impact. He stood up, dusting off the snow. His left leg was bent at a wrong angle. Crack! He snapped it back into place. He didn't even wince. Pain is information, he recited. It tells you you're still alive. Month 9, the apex predator. It was late February. The exam was 1 week away. Izuku was deep in the territory of the mountain. He was hunting for dinner. He had brought a knife, but he rarely used it. He preferred to track. He froze. The wind shifted. Musk. Rotting meat. Anger. It wasn't a villain. It was nature. Izuku turned slowly. Emerging from the brush was a bear. But not a normal bear. It was a shuri brown bear, but it had clearly been affected by the Quirk era's environmental radiation. It was massive, easily 10 feet tall on its hind legs, with bone spurs protruding from its shoulders. It was an apex predator. The bear saw Izuku. It roared, a sound that shook the snow from the trees. It saw a small, hairless ape. It saw a meal. Izuku didn't run. He didn't pull his knife. He dropped his rucksack. You're big, Izuku said calmly. The bear charged. It moved terrifyingly fast for its size. Izuku waited. His heart rate stayed steady. Thump thump. When the bear was 5 feet away, it swiped. A paw the size of a manhole cover, tipped with razor claws, aimed for Izuku's head. Izuku ducked. He moved inside the guard. He slammed his shoulder into the bear's chest. The impact sounded like a car crash. The bear grunted, stumbling back. Izuku didn't transform. He didn't use his claws. He wanted to test his raw power. He grabbed the bear by the fur of its neck and its flank. He roared, not a human shout, but a primal, vibrating growl that matched the bear's in intensity. He lifted. With a heave that tore his uniform shirt to shreds, Izuku Midoriya suplexed the 1,000-pound bear into the frozen earth. Wham! The ground shook. The bear was stunned, the wind knocked out of it. Izuku didn't kill it. He pinned it. He straddled the beast, his forearm pressed against its throat. He leaned down, his face inches from the bear's massive jaws. His eyes glowed feral green. His canines lengthened just enough to be visible. Mine, Izuku growled. He projected his killing intent. It was a palpable aura, a wave of pure, concentrated violence that said, if you move, I will unmake you. The bear froze. It looked into Izuku's eyes. It saw something older and darker than itself. The bear whined. It went limp, exposing its throat. Submission. Izuku held the stare for 10 seconds. Then he let go. He stood up and stepped back. The bear scrambled to its feet. It didn't attack. It looked at him one last time, lowered its head in respect, and bolted into the woods. Izuku watched it go. He touched his chest. He hadn't transformed. He hadn't lost control. He had used the beast, not the other way around. I'm ready, he said. The day of the exam. The morning of the UA entrance exam was crisp and clear. Inko was a nervous wreck. She was fluttering around the kitchen, trying to tie Izuku's tie for him, but her hands were shaking too much. Mom, Izuku said gently, catching her hands. I got it. He tied the tie. It looked comical on him now. His neck was so thick the collar of his middle school uniform didn't close. The jacket strained at the seams, the buttons holding on for dear life against his chest muscles. He looked in the mirror. The boy who looked back wasn't the scrawny kid who cried when he was bullied. He was a tank. His jaw was square, his hair wilder, his skin slightly rougher. There were faint scars on his cheeks that never fully faded. Do you have your pencils? Your admission ticket? Inko asked. I have everything, Izuku said. He walked to the door. He put on his shoes, new ones, reinforced with steel toes. Izuku? He turned back. Inko was crying, but she was smiling. You look strong. Izuku smiled. It wasn't the polite smile of a good boy. It was a confident, sharp-edged grin. I am. UA High School gates. The massive glass barriers of UA glittered in the sun. Students swarmed the entrance, a sea of nervous energy. Izuku walked through the crowd. People parted around him. It wasn't just his size. It was the air around him. While other students were chatting nervously or reviewing notes, Izuku walked with a predator's gait, silent, efficient, eyes scanning for threats. He saw Uraraka Ochako tripping over her own feet a few yards ahead. In another life, he might have rushed to catch her, blushing and stuttering. In this life, he sidestepped her. Whoops! She squeaked, levitating herself before she hit the ground. Izuku didn't stop. His focus was on the door. Out of my way, Deku. The voice came from behind him. Bakugo. Izuku stopped. He turned slowly. Bakugo stood there, hands in his pockets, glaring. But the glare lacked its usual bite. Bakugo had been watching Izuku for the last 10 months. He had seen the way Izuku moved in P. He had noticed the way Izuku stared at walls like he could see through them. Katsuki, Izuku acknowledged. Don't die, Bakugo grunted. I want to be the one to crush you. Get in line, Izuku said calmly. They walked into the orientation hall side by side. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They were two alphas entering a new territory, and the rest of the examinees were just sheep. Izuku sat down in the dark auditorium. President Mike started screaming about excitement and rules. Izuku tuned him out. He closed his eyes and inhaled. He smelled oil. Metal. Rubber. Robots, he thought. The enemy is machines. He cracked his knuckles. Good. I don't have to hold back against machines. The beast in his chest stirred, waking up from its nap. It smelled the challenge. Time to hunt. The written exam was a test of patience, not intelligence. For Izuku Midoriya, sitting in a silent room for 3 hours was torture. It wasn't because he didn't know the answers, he did. He had devoured textbooks with the same ravenous intensity he applied to his physical training. The logic of math, the structure of language, the history of heroics, it all made sense. It was a hunt for information, and he was a good hunter. The torture was the sensory deprivation. The room was too quiet. The scratching of pencils sounded like beetles scurrying under tree bark. The heartbeat of the boy 3 desks over was erratic, skipping a beat every 12 seconds. Arithmetic, Izuku noted absently while solving a quadratic equation. He should get that checked. Izuku finished the exam in half the allotted time. He placed his pencil down. The wood groaned under his grip, splintering slightly. He retracted his fingers, taking a deep breath to keep his claws sheathed. He looked around the room. Bakugo was a few rows ahead, slouching, radiating a heat that shimmered in the air. Bakugo was bored too. Izuku closed his eyes and waited. He meditated on the image of the mountain. The cold snow. The silence that wasn't empty, but heavy. He needed that calm. Because the next part of the exam was the practical, and for the practical, he needed to let the chain loose. The orientation hall. Everybody say hey. President Mick's voice hit Izuku like a physical slap. The sound hero's Quirk was amplified by the massive speakers, creating a wall of noise that vibrated in Izuku's teeth. Izuku winced, his hands instinctively coming up to cover his ears. He was wearing a dark green hoodie, the hood pulled up to muffle the sensory input, but it wasn't enough. Too loud, Izuku grumbled, his voice a low growl that was lost in the cheering of the crowd. He was sitting next to Bakugo. The two of them formed a vacuum of intimidation in the middle of the auditorium. The seats directly in front of them and behind them were empty. Other examinees had taken one look at the scowling blonde and the hulking, hooded figure next to him and decided to sit elsewhere. President Mike continued his explanation of the mock city urban battles. 3 types of robots. Points based on difficulty. This is boring, Bakugo muttered, kicking the seat in front of him. Just tell us what to kill. Focus, Izuku whispered back. He's hiding something. Ha! There are 4 silhouettes on the screen. He only mentioned 3. Suddenly, a hand shot up in the middle of the auditorium. A tall boy with glasses and a severe haircut stood up, chopping his hand through the air like a robot. Excuse me, sir. But on the handout, there are clearly 4 types of villains listed. If this is a misprint, then UA, the most prominent school in Japan, should be ashamed of such a foolish error. The boy turned, pointing a finger directly at the back row. Directly at Izuku. And you? The one in the green hoodie. Izuku froze. His pupils constricted into slits. He slowly lowered his hands from his ears. You've been growling and shifting in your seat the entire time, the boy, Tenya Ida, accused loudly. It's distracting. If you're just here to cause a disturbance, then please leave immediately. The auditorium went silent. Hundreds of eyes turned to look at Izuku. Bakugo snorted, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. He's calling you out, Deku? Izuku stood up. The chair creaked in protest. He didn't look at the other students. He stared directly at Ida. He lowered his hood. The scar on his cheek caught the artificial light. His eyes were predatory, glowing faintly in the dim hall. My hearing is sensitive, Izuku said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. It was deep, rough, like stones grinding together. The speaker is loud. I'm in pain. You yelling at me isn't helping. He leaned forward, bracing his hands on the seat back in front of him. The metal frame bent under his grip with a high-pitched squeal. And if I'm distracting you, Izuku added, baring his teeth in a smile that looked more like a threat, then you don't have the focus to be a hero. Prey gets eaten when it looks the wrong way. Ida recoiled, stunned by the raw aggression radiating from the boy. He opened his mouth to retort, but President Mike interjected. Okay. Calm down, listeners. The examinee number 7111 is correct. The fourth villain is a zero-pointer. It's an obstacle, a gimmick. There's no point in defeating it, so I recommend you just avoid it, like a trap in a video game. Ida bowed stiffly. Thank you, sir. I apologize for the interruption. He sat down, but he cast a wary glance back at Izuku. Izuku sat back down. He ignored the whispers breaking out around him. You scared him, Bakugo chuckled. He smells like rulebooks and anxiety, Izuku dismissed. He'll freeze up in a real fight. Battle Center B. The locker room. The changing room was thick with the scent of testosterone and nervous sweat. Izuku stripped off his school uniform. His body was a map of his training. Scars from the forest, branches, rocks, the bear, crisscrossed his back. His muscles were dense, compacted slabs of meat that rippled with every movement. He pulled on a black tank top that fit snugly, leaving his arms exposed. He wore heavy cargo pants with reinforced knees and steel-toed combat boots. He wrapped his wrists in white athletic tape, not for support, but to keep his sweat from making his grips slippery. He didn't wear armor. His bones were his armor. A redhead with jagged teeth, Eijiro Kurishima, walked past, then stopped. He looked at Izuku's back. Whoa, man, Kurishima said, grinning. Those are some manly scars. You get into a fight with a lawnmower? Izuku turned. He sniffed the air. Rock. Hardening quirk. Friendly. Bear, Izuku answered. Kirishima blinked. A bear? A big one. Izuku closed his locker and walked away, leaving Kirishima confused and impressed. The gates. The bus ride to Battle Center B was quiet. Izuku stood near the back, holding the strap. He could feel the engine vibrating through the floor. When they arrived, the sheer scale of the mock city was impressive. Tall buildings, paved streets, intricate alleyways. Yui didn't cut corners. Izuku stood at the front of the pack. He stretched his neck, cracking it loudly. He saw the girl from the entrance, Uraraka. She was standing a few feet away, taking deep breaths, looking like she was about to vomit. She smells like ozone and fear, Izuku analyzed. Zero gravity? Telekinesis? She looked at him. She took a step forward, perhaps to apologize for the near collision earlier, or maybe to wish him luck. Izuku turned his head away. He wasn't here to make friends. He was here to feed the beast. Excuse me, Ida's voice cut in again. He stepped between Izuku and Uraraka. She looks like she's trying to concentrate. You shouldn't distract her. Izuku looked at Ida. You again. I am simply ensuring the fairness of the exam, Ida stated, adjusting his glasses. You seem to be a violent element. I will be watching you. Izuku laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. Watch all you want, Four Eyes. Just try to keep up. Suddenly, from the tower above the gate, President Mick's voice boomed. Start. The other students froze. They were waiting for a countdown. They were waiting for a whistle. Izuku didn't wait. The moment the word start hit the air, Izuku exploded into motion. He didn't run like a track star. He dropped low, his knuckles grazing the pavement. He pushed off with incredible force, cracking the concrete beneath his boots. He was a blur of green and black, leaving a dust cloud in his wake. "What are you waiting for?" President Mike yelled. "There are no countdowns in real fights. Go! Go! Go!" The other students scrambled, panic setting in. But Izuku was already gone. He was already hunting the slaughter. Izuku rounded the first corner and found them. 3 one-pointers, fast, wheeled drones with capture tape launchers. They locked onto him. Target acquired. Izuku didn't slow down. He accelerated. "Too slow," he growled. As he closed the distance, the change happened. It wasn't the full transformation. That was too big, too clumsy for this urban environment. This was the hunter form. His eyes flooded with green. His canines extended. His fingernails darkened and hardened, though the bone claws stayed sheathed for now. The muscles in his legs swelled, tearing the fabric of his cargo pants slightly. He leaped. He hit the center robot with the force of a wrecking ball. He didn't punch it, he tackled it. He slammed it into the pavement, the metal chassis crumpling under his weight. The other 2 robots fired their tape. Izuku sensed the projectiles, the shift in air pressure, the sound of the pneumatic launch. He dodged instinctively, rolling off the destroyed robot. He came up in a crouch, snicked. 3 6-inch bone claws popped from his right hand. He backhanded the robot to his left. The claws sliced through the metal casing, severing the internal wiring and the battery core. Sparks showered over him. The third robot tried to retreat. Izuku lunged, grabbing its wheel strut with his left hand. He squeezed. The metal crumpled like a soda can. He dragged the robot toward him and drove his claws through its central eye. 3 robots. 10 seconds. 6 points. More, Izuku hissed. He sprinted down the main street. He found a 3-pointer, a massive, hulking machine with missiles. It was engaged with another student, a boy with lasers shooting from his navel. The laser boy was struggling, hiding behind a car. The robot raised a fist to crush the car. Izuku didn't save the boy. He stole the kill. He ran up the side of a building, his claws digging into the brickwork to give him purchase. He vaulted off the wall, soaring over the robot's head. He landed on its back. Raff! Izuku drove all 6 claws into the robot's neck joint. He planted his feet against its shoulders and pulled. With a screech of tearing metal that set everyone's teeth on edge, Izuku ripped the robot's head clean off. The massive chassis collapsed. Izuku rode it down, standing on the ruin like a king. He looked at the laser boy Aoyama. Aoyama was staring at him, mouth open, face pale. "Merci?" Aoyama squeaked. "Move," Izuku barked. "Or get stepped on." Izuku leaped away, sniffing the air for more oil. The observation room. In a darkened room lined with monitors, the staff of UA High watched the chaos unfold. "This year's batch is spirited," Midnight commented, licking her lips. "Especially that explosive boy in Center A, and whoever that is in Center B." She pointed to a screen. It showed Izuku tearing the arm off a 2-pointer and using it to club another robot to death. Candidate 7111. Izuku Midoriya Nizu, the principal, said, shuffling some papers. "Quirk, Gullo. Wolverine. He's violent," Cementos noted, frowning. "He's not subduing the targets. He's obliterating them. Look at the damage to the infrastructure. He's clawing up the roads, the walls. He fights like a villain," another teacher muttered. "No," Aizawa spoke up from the back of the room. He was leaning against the wall, his eyes fixed on the screen. "He fights like he's trying to survive. Look at his eyes. He's constantly scanning. He's not enjoying the destruction, he's executing it. It's efficiency." "Efficiency?" Vlad King scoffed. "He's ripping them apart with his bare hands. And look at his rescue points," Niza pointed out. 0. All Might stood in the corner, his skeletal form hidden by a baggy suit. He watched Izuku on the screen. He watched the boy he had rejected. "He's strong," All Might thought. "Stronger than when I met him. But that anger, it's still there. He's fighting the exam, not taking it. He has 60 villain points," Midnight noted. "That's a passing score. But without rescue points. Let's see how he handles the true test," Niza said, his paw hovering over a large red button. A hero must show quality even when faced with overwhelming odds. Misa pressed the button. Battle Center B Plaza. Izuku was panting. Not from exhaustion but from heat. His body temperature was running at 105 degrees. His regeneration was working constantly to repair the micro-trauma in his joints from the impacts. He had 75 points. He had stopped counting, but he knew it was enough. He stood in the middle of a pile of scrap metal. Oil stained his hands up to his elbows. His tank top was torn, revealing the dense muscle of his chest. The other students were avoiding him. They were fighting on the periphery, terrified of getting between the mad dog and his prey. Boring, Izuku muttered. He wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of grease. Is this it? Is this the best Yui has? Then, the ground jumped. Boom! A vibration traveled through the soles of his boots, up his shins, and rattled his teeth. Boom! The buildings down the main avenue began to crumble. Shadows stretched long across the street. From behind the skyscrapers it rose, the zero-pointer. It was colossal. It was larger than Godzilla. Its head scraped the clouds. Its green paint was chipped and scarred. It had tank treads the size of houses. The students froze. What is that? It's huge! Run! Run away! The robot punched a building. The structure exploded, raining debris onto the street. Dust billowed out like a pyroclastic flow. Panic ensued. The examinees turned and fled, screaming. It was a stampede. Izuku stood still. He looked up. He had to crane his neck all the way back to see the face of the machine. His instincts screamed, danger. Predator. Alpha. For a normal human, this signal meant run. For an apex predator, this signal meant challenge. The beast in Izuku's chest roared. It didn't want to run. It wanted to topple the giant. It wanted to prove that size didn't matter. Izuku grinned. A drop of blood from a cut on his forehead ran down his nose. Now we're talking, he whispered. He took a step toward the robot. Oh wow! The sound was faint, buried under the rumble of the treads and the screams of the students. But Izuku heard it. He paused. He swiveled his head. Uraraka Ochako was trapped. A piece of rubble from the destroyed building had pinned her leg. She was struggling, her face contorted in pain. She was directly in the path of the zero-pointer. The robot raised a massive foot. It was going to crush her. Not out of malice, but out of indifference. She was an ant to it. Izuku looked at the robot. He looked at the girl. All Might's words flashed in his mind. Save, not slaughter. Shut up, Izuku growled at the memory. I'm not doing this for you. He wasn't saving her because it was the right thing to do. He was saving her because that robot was his kill, and nobody steals the Alpha's kill. And the Alpha protects the herd, even if the herd is weak. The red haze descended. Izuku's heart rate spiked to 250. Roarer! The transformation hit him like a lightning bolt. His bones cracked and lengthened. His spine hunched. He grew, his clothes tearing. He became the pharaoh form, 8 feet of hair, muscle, and bone. He didn't run. He charged. He moved on all fours, galloping like a wolf. He covered the distance to the zero-pointer in seconds. The other students, glancing back, stopped in horror. Is that the kid from before? He's a monster! Izuku ignored them. He reached the base of the robot just as the tread was about to crush Uraraka. He didn't try to lift the foot. That was physics, mass times acceleration. He couldn't stop it, but he could redirect it. Izuku slammed his shoulder into the side of the tread mechanism. He dug his claws, now 18 inches long and thick as railway spikes, into the metal plates. Move! He bellowed, his voice distorted and demonic. He drove his legs into the asphalt. He shoved with every ounce of hysterical strength his mutation provided. The tread jerked. The gears ground together with a screech that shattered windows. The robot's foot shifted, missing Uraraka by 3 feet. The impact shockwave blew Uraraka's hair back. She looked up, eyes wide, at the hulking beast standing over her. Izuku looked down. His eyes were white. He was losing control. Go, he snarled at her. Uraraka touched the rock on her leg, floating it. She scrambled away, terrified but alive. Izuku turned back to the robot. The robot swiveled its sensors down. It saw the anomaly. It raised a fist to smash the pest. Izuku laughed. It was a horrible, wet sound. He jumped. He latched onto the robot's leg. He began to climb. He was a blur of violence. He didn't look for handholds. He made them. He drove his claws into the steel plating, tearing his way up the chassis. He ripped out bundles of hydraulic cables as thick as tree trunks. Oil sprayed over him like black blood. The robot flailed, trying to shake him off. It smashed itself against a building. Izuku took the hit. His ribs shattered. Heal. His lung punctured. Heal. He kept climbing. He reached the torso. He clawed his way up the chest plates. He reached the neck. The robot's red optical sensors glared at him. Izuku stood on the robot's shoulder. He was an ant on a titan, but he was the deadliest ant in the world. He raised both hands. All 6 claws glinted in the sunlight. Sit down. He plunged his claws into the neck joint, severing the main CPU connection and the power coupling. He didn't stop there. He ripped. He tore. He grabbed the internal skeleton of the robot and heaved. With a sound like a dying whale, the zero-pointer powered down. Its head slumped forward, hanging by a few wires. The explosions inside its chassis rocked the frame. The giant began to fall backward. Izuku rode it down. Crash. The impact created an earthquake. Dust swallowed the plaza. Silence. The students stood frozen, staring at the dust cloud. Even the teachers in the observation room were silent. Slowly, the dust settled. The zero-pointer lay destroyed, a mountain of scrap. Standing on top of the robot's chest was Izuku. He was reverting. His body shrank, steam pouring off him as his biology rewrote itself back to human standard. He fell to his knees, his clothes in tatters, covered in oil and his own blood. He was shaking. The rage was fading, leaving only exhaustion. He looked up. He saw the students staring at him. He saw the fear in their eyes. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He raised a fist in the air, and then he collapsed face first into the metal. The aftermath. Out of the way. Move it, move it! Recovery girl bustled through the crowd of stunned teenagers. She climbed up the wreckage of the zero-pointer with surprising agility for her age. She reached Izuku. He was already waking up. Stay down, Sonny, she ordered. You took a nasty fall. Izuku pushed himself up. His arms snapped back into place with a sickening pop. I'm fine, he rasped. Recovery girl paused. She watched a laceration on his back close up before her eyes. High-speed regeneration, she muttered. And extreme durability. You're a tough one. She offered him some gummies. For the calorie deficit. You must be starving. Izuku grabbed the packet and tore it open with his teeth, swallowing the gummies whole. Thanks. He stood up. He looked down at Uraraka, who was being treated by a medical bot nearby. She looked at him. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked awestruck. You saved me, she mouthed. Izuku grunted and looked away. Midoriya! Ida ran up to the wreckage. He was waving his arms. That was incredibly reckless. You could have been killed. You destroyed school property on a massive scale. Ida stopped. He looked at the destroyed robot. He looked at Izuku. But... Ida swallowed his pride. I misjudged you. You acted to save a fellow examinee when the rest of us ran. That was admirable. Izuku stared at him. He wiped the oil from his face. I didn't do it to be admirable, Izuku said, hopping down from the robot. He landed heavily. I did it because it was in my way. He walked past Ida, past the staring crowd, toward the exit. I'm going home. I'm hungry. The observation room final tally. Well, Nisa said, clapping his paws together. That was certainly something. Villain points, 78, Midnight read from the screen. That puts him in first place for combat. And rescue points? All Might asked quietly. He drew the aggro of the zero-pointer, Aizawa said. He engaged it directly when it threatened a student. It was violent, yes. But it was effective. If he hadn't drawn its attention and disabled it, Uraraka would have been crushed. And Vlad King added reluctantly. His aggression made the other robots focus on him during the first half. He acted as a tank for the weaker students nearby? Nisa smiled. 60 rescue points. For a total of 138. The room was silent. It was a record-breaking score. He's a wild card, Aizawa warned. He's dangerous. If we can't control him, he'll be a problem. That is why he must be here, Niza said, his eyes gleaming. We're better to teach a beast to be a hero than the finest heroes school in the world? Niza turned to All Might. He rejected your view of heroics, All Might. But he saved the girl. Perhaps there is more than one way to be a symbol. All Might looked at the screen, at the retreating back of the boy who refused to be a rabbit. Perhaps, All Might whispered. Or perhaps we just let a wolf into the henhouse. 1 week later the letter. Izuku sat at his desk. He was eating a steak. Inko slid the envelope onto the table. It was heavy. It had the Yui wax seal. Izuku. He put down his fork. He picked up the envelope. He didn't use a letter opener. He slit the top with a fingernail. A metal disc fell out. A hologram projected onto the wall. It wasn't All Might. It was a small, white mouse bear dog creature in a suit. Greetings, Mr. Midoriya. I am Principal Nizu. Izuku chewed his steak. The animal principal. Interesting. You are a terrifying young man. Nizu chirped happily. You destroyed 78 points worth of machinery. A formidable display of raw power. However, the screen changed. It showed the video of Uraraka. A hero is not just about destruction. It is about saving. And in your own, unique, way, you did just that. By engaging the threat, you saved Miss Uraraka. And for that, we award you rescue points. The score tallied up. 138. Welcome to your hero academia, Izuku Midoriya. You came to us as a beast. Let us see if you can leave as a hero. The hologram faded. Izuku stared at the empty space. I got in, he said. Inko burst into tears, hugging him. I knew it. I knew you could do it. Izuku patted her back awkwardly. He looked at his hand. He had done it. Without One for All. Without All Might's blessing. He smiled. Yue, he whispered. Get ready. The hunt was just beginning. The Yue high school uniform felt like a straitjacket. Izuku Midoriya stood in front of the mirror in the hallway of his apartment, tugging at the collar of the gray blazer. It was the largest size the school offered, designated 3XL, yet the fabric strained across his shoulders like it was holding back a flood. The buttons on his chest were holding on by a thread and a prayer. It's tight, Izuku grumbled, rolling his neck. A satisfying crack echoed, loud enough to make his mother jump from the kitchen. Oh, Izuku, please don't rip it on the first day. Inko Midoriya fretted, rushing over with a lint roller. She reached up. She had to reach up now, her son having grown another 2 inches in the last month alone, and smoothed the lapels. You look very formidable. Formidable is good, Izuku said. He grabbed his yellow backpack. It looked comically small against his back. Remember, Inko whispered, squeezing his arm. Her hand felt small and fragile against his bicep, which was hard as oak. Be nice. Make friends. Don't eat anyone. Izuku offered a small, lopsided smirk. It was the closest thing he had to a reassuring smile. Only if they bite first. He opened the door and stepped out. The morning air was crisp. April in Japan was usually filled with the scent of cherry blossoms. To Izuku, it smelled like pollen, damp asphalt, and the millions of people waking up in the city. He walked to the train station. He didn't run, he stalked. His gait was heavy, his steel-toed boots striking the pavement with a rhythmic thud-thud-thud. On the train, a circle of empty space formed around him. Businessmen and students instinctively pressed themselves against the doors or other seats. It wasn't just his size, it was the aura. It was the scent of an apex predator that triggered the lizard brain in normal humans, whispering, run. Hide. Danger. Izuku ignored them. He closed his eyes and listened to the rattle of the tracks, centering himself. The beast inside was calm today, sated by a heavy breakfast of 6 steaks and a dozen eggs. But it was watching. Always watching. Class 1A. The halls of UA were built for heroes. They were wide, tall, and imposing. Izuku appreciated the architecture. It didn't feel fragile. He found the door. A massive barrier, 20 feet high, painted with a bold red 1A. Barrier, Izuku thought. Or a cage? He gripped the handle and slid the door open. It moved silently on well-oiled tracks. The noise hit him immediately. Don't put your feet on the desk. Ha! Stop telling me what to do, you four-eyed elite trash. It is disrespectful to the UA upperclassmen who used these desks before us. Remove them at once. Izuku stepped into the room. The noise didn't stop, but the atmosphere shifted. It was like a drop in barometric pressure before a storm. Tenya Ida, the boy with the engine calves and the rulebook stuck up his spine, froze mid-chop. Katsuki Bakugo, feet resting arrogantly on the desk, stopped scowling and shifted his gaze to the door. Izuku walked in. He didn't look at Ida. He didn't look at the rest of the class, who were staring at him with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He looked at Bakugo. Morning, Katsuki, Izuku rumbled. Bakugo's eye twitched. Deku, you're in my seat, Izuku lied. He didn't know the seating chart. He just wanted to see if Bakugo would move. Bakugo scoffed, smoke curling from his palms. Beat it, mutt. Find a hydrant to piss on. Ida marched up to Izuku. You. The one from the entrance exam. Midoriya, correct? Izuku looked down at Ida. Correct. I am Tenya Ida, from Semi-Private Academy. Ida bowed, a stiff, robotic motion. I must apologize. I misjudged you during the exam. I thought you were merely a disruptive brute, but you perceived the true nature of the test, the rescue points, while I was blinded by the objective. I hate to admit it, but you were the better hero. Izuku blinked. He sniffed the air around Ida. Sincerity. Soap. Motor oil. I didn't do it for the points, Izuku said flatly, walking past him. It was just in my way. He found an empty desk at the back of the room, near the window. He squeezed into it. The chair groaned in protest. Oh! It's you! Izuku turned his head. Standing at the door was the girl. The gravity girl. She was beaming, her round face flushed with excitement. The messy hair. The scary eyes. She pointed at him. You're the one who saved me. I'm Ochako Uraraka. I wanted to thank you, but you disappeared so fast after the exam. Izuku stared at her. Sweetness. Machi. Nervous sweat. You're loud, Izuku said. Uraraka blinked, her smile faltering slightly. Oh. Sorry. I'm just excited. Isn't this amazing? We're in the hero course. If you're here to make friends, you can pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. The class froze. Slowly, everyone looked down. Lying in the doorway, encased in a bright yellow sleeping bag like a monolithic caterpillar, was a man. He had long, messy black hair, tired eyes, and stubble that looked days old. He sucked on a jelly pouch with a look of utter boredom. He stood up, shedding the sleeping bag. He wore all black, with a gray scarf wrapped loosely around his neck. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man said, checking a stopwatch. Time is limited. You kids are not rational enough. He walked to the podium. His eyes swept the room, lingering for a fraction of a second on Izuku. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Nice to meet you, teacher? The class thought collectively. He looks like a hobo. Izuku narrowed his eyes. No. He smells like coffee and old blood. And capture tape. He's a pro. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a stack of blue gym uniforms. Put these on and head out to the grounds, Aizawa ordered. We're doing a Quirk apprehension test. The P grounds. The locker room had been cramped. Minoru Mineta, a small boy with grape-like balls on his head, had taken one look at Izuku shirtless and nearly fainted. The scars on Izuku's back, thick, white keloids from years of reckless training and animal encounters, told a story of violence that these prep school kids couldn't comprehend. Kirishima, the redhead with the shark teeth, had tried to strike up a conversation about manliness, but Izuku had simply grunted and focused on lacing his boots. Now, they stood on the dirt field under the bright sun. A Quirk apprehension test? The class exclaimed. What about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Uraraka asked. If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events, Aizawa deadpanned. He turned his back to them, looking at the horizon. UA's selling point is freedom of style. That applies to the teachers as well. He turned back, his dark eyes sharp. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school, right? Without your quirks. He held up a ball. Bakugo, you finished first in the entrance exam. What was your softball throw record in junior high? 67 meters, Bakugo said. Try it with your quirk. Aizawa tossed him the ball. Do whatever you want as long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He stretched his arms, a wicked grin splitting his face. He glanced at Izuku. Die! Bakugo threw the ball, adding a massive explosion at the point of release. The ball shot into the sky like a missile, leaving a trail of smoke. Die! Izuku muttered. Bit dramatic. Aizawa held up a device. 705.2 meters. The class erupted. Whoa! 700 meters? That looks like fun. We can use our quirks as much as we want. Awesome! The air temperature dropped. Aizawa lowered the device. His hair shadowed his eyes. Fun, you say? Izuku felt the shift. The teacher's killing intent leaked out. It wasn't the hot, raging bloodlust of a beast. It was the cold, calculated intent of an executioner. You have 3 years to become a hero, Aizawa said softly. Will you have an attitude like that the whole time? He grinned. It was a terrifying expression. All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential. He looked directly at Izuku, and will be punished with expulsion. The class gasped. Expulsion? It's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters, Aizawa listed. Big accidents. Selfish villains. Calamities whose time or place can't be predicted. Japan is covered in unreasonableness. Heroes are the ones who reverse those situations. He pointed a finger at them. Go beyond. Plus ultra. Overcome it with everything you've got. Izuku cracked his neck. A low rumble started in his chest. Expulsion? A threat? Good. He hated safety nets. Bring it on, Izuku growled. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida was up first against a frog girl named Azui. Ida's engines roared. 3.04 seconds. Then it was Izuku's turn. He was paired against Bakugo. They stood at the starting line. Don't think you can beat me in speed, Deku, Bakugo hissed. You're heavy. You're slow. Izuku didn't answer. He got down on all fours. The other students murmured. Is he going to run like a dog? He looks like a track starter blocks, but without the blocks. The starting robot beeped. Gunshot. Bakugo launched himself with explosions behind him, flying low to the ground. Izuku exploded with pure muscle. His claws dug into the dirt for traction at the start, ripping chunks of earth out. He galloped. It was a terrifying, loping stride, his spine flexing and extending like a cheetah's. His regeneration factor allowed him to push his muscles past the tearing point. He was running at 110% capacity, tearing fibers and healing them in the microseconds between strides. He was heavy. He was dense. But the force he generated was monstrous. Bakugo crossed the line. 4.13 seconds. Izuku thundered past a split second later. 4.20 seconds. Bakugo skidded to a stop, panting. He looked back, smirking. I win. Izuku stood up, dusting off his hands. He wasn't even winded. By 0.07 seconds. Careful, Katsuki. I'm catching up. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku held the dynamometer. Beside him, a tall, multi-armed boy named Shoji was squeezing his own device. 540 kilograms, the machine beeped for Shoji. Whoa! You're a monster! The electric blonde boy, Kaminari, shouted. Izuku looked at his machine. He wrapped his fingers around it. The metal felt cold. Crush, he squeezed. He didn't use a transformation. He just used the density of his bones and the hydraulic power of his forearms. The machine whirred. The numbers climbed. 300, 400, 500, crunch. The casing of the machine shattered. The digital display cracked and went black. Metal springs popped out. Oops, Izuku said. Aizawa walked over, looking at the broken device. That's school property, Midoriya. It was cheap, Izuku countered, tossing the pieces into a bin. Estimate 600. Aizawa marked something on his clipboard. He didn't look impressed. He looked wary. Test 3. Standing long jump. Most students used their quirks to fly or glide. Aoyama used his laser. Bakugo used explosions. Izuku stood at the edge of the sandbox. He crouched low. He channeled the beast into his legs. The muscles in his thighs swelled, ripping the seams of his gym pants slightly. He jumped. He didn't glide. He launched. He was a cannonball. He cleared the sandbox entirely. He landed on the grass on the other side, rolling to disperse the momentum. Raw power, Ojiro, the boy with the tail, noted. No tricks. Just scary strength. Test 4, repeated sidesteps. Mineta was the king here, bouncing back and forth using his balls. Izuku struggled. He was fast, but he wasn't agile in a confined space. He was built for straight lines and charging. He stepped sideways, his heavy boots tearing up the turf. He got a decent score, but nothing spectacular. Too bulky, Aizawa noted quietly. Test 5, ball throw. This was it. The main event. Uraraka went up. She touched the ball, threw it, and it just kept going. Infinity? The class screamed. That's cheating. Kaminari laughed. It's a quirk test, Aizawa reminded them. Now. Midoriya. The class went quiet. Everyone watched the beast of the entrance exam walk to the circle. Izuku picked up the ball. It felt light. Too light. Like a marshmallow, he stood in the circle. He could transform. He could go full feral, grow to 8 feet, and launch the ball into orbit. But he remembered Aizawa's eyes. The teacher was watching him closely. Waiting for a slip-up. Waiting for the monster to lose control. I don't need the wolf for this, Izuku decided. I just need physics. He wound up. He planted his foot. He rotated his hips, engaging his core, his shoulder, his arm. He prepared to put every ounce of his adamantine skeleton's density into the throw. He threw. Rah! The ball left his hand. It flew about 40 meters. It didn't soar. It flopped. Izuku froze. His arm throbbed. The power! It had vanished. The explosive snap he expected hadn't happened. It felt like his muscles had suddenly forgotten how to fire. What? Izuku whispered. He looked at his hands. The claws felt distant. The deep, simmering heat of his regeneration was gone. He felt cold. He felt human. He turned around. Aizawa stood there. His scarf was floating in the air, defying gravity. His hair was standing on end. And his eyes were glowing a piercing red. I erased your quirk, Aizawa said. His voice was dry, tired. The class gasped. Erased? That's Eraserhead. The underground hero. Izuku didn't care about the name. He cared about the violation. He felt naked. Give it back, Izuku growled. He took a step forward. Even without his quirk, he was big. He was intimidating. Aizawa didn't flinch. He stepped closer, entering Izuku's personal space. The entrance exam was definitely not rational enough, Aizawa said. Even a kid like you was accepted. A kid like me? Izuku repeated, his voice dropping. You have a powerful mutation, Aizawa analyzed. Physical enhancement. Regeneration. A feral state. But from what I saw in the footage, you are ruled by it. You charge in. You break things. You break yourself. Aizawa pointed at the ball on the grass. You were about to use your full strength, weren't you? Just to get a high score. Just to show off. I was going to throw the ball, Izuku said through gritted teeth. You were going to lose control, Aizawa corrected. I saw it in your eyes. The red haze. You are a loose cannon, Midoriya. In a hostage situation, you're more likely to eat the hostage than save them. The scarf lashed out, wrapping around Izuku's torso. It was tight. Strong steel wire woven into carbon nanofibers. You cannot be a hero with just power, Aizawa hissed. You need restraint. You need a mind. Right now? You're just a wild animal in clothes. Izuku stared at Aizawa. For a moment, the old Izuku wanted to cry. The old Izuku wanted to apologize. But the apex predator didn't apologize. Izuku felt the anger rising. But this time, he didn't let it blind him. He didn't let the red haze take over. He focused it. He compressed it. He smiled. It was a terrifying smile. It was the smile of a wolf that had just found a gap in the fence. You think I'm just a quirk? Izuku asked softly. Aizawa blinked. His eyes were drying out. He blinked and his hair fell. The red glow vanished. The scarf loosened. I returned your quirk, Aizawa said, stepping back. You have one more throw. Hurry up and get it over with. Izuku rubbed his chest where the scarf had been. He could feel the heat returning. The beast was back, but he didn't transform. He picked up the ball. He looked at Aizawa. You think I rely on the beast? You think I'm nothing without the rage? Watch me. Izuku walked back to the circle. He didn't growl. He didn't hunch over. He stood tall. Perfect posture. He channeled his quirk not into size, but into density. He made his bones heavy. He made his muscles tight. He became a living trebuchet. He wound up. This wasn't an animal lash. This was human technique honed by 10 months of hell in the mountains. Smash. He threw. The air cracked. A sonic boom rippled through the field. The ball shot out of his hand so fast it was a blur. It tore through the air, screaming as it broke the sound barrier. It soared high, arcing beautifully against the blue sky. It vanished into the distance. Aizawa looked at his device. Beep. He turned the screen to the class. 802.4 meters. The class was silent. It was further than Bakugo. It was pure, unadulterated power. Izuku lowered his arm. His shoulder smoked slightly. He turned to Aizawa. He didn't look triumphant. He looked cold. I didn't lose control, Izuku said. He walked past the teacher, leaning in close so only Aizawa could hear. And if you ever try to leash me again, make sure the chain is stronger. Aizawa watched him go. A slow, creepy grin spread across the teacher's face. Zero hesitation. He challenged my authority instantly. He has the ego of a pro, and the power to back it up. This kid. Aizawa thought. He's a problem. But he's a useful problem. The results. The rest of the tests were a blur. Sit-ups? Izuku did them until the bell rang. His core was iron. Seated toe touch? He failed miserably. Too much muscle mass. He couldn't bend that way. Distance run? He lapped everyone except Momo Yaoyorozu, who created a scooter, and Ida. He ran forever, his lungs refusing to quit. The sun was setting. The students gathered around Aizawa. Okay, here are the results. The total is simply the aggregate of your marks. A hologram appeared. 1. Izuku Midoriya. 2. Momo Yaoyorozu. 3. Shoto Todoroki. 4. Katsuki Bakugo. 5. Tenya Ida. 21. Minoru Mineta. Izuku looked at the top of the list. He nodded once. Acceptable. Bakugo was shaking. He was staring at the board. 4th place. He had lost to the icy hot bastard, the creation girl, and Deku. DKU. Bakugo screamed, explosions popping on his hands. He lunged. What did you do? How did you get that strong? Aizawa's scarf shot out, wrapping Bakugo up instantly. Don't make me use my quirk so much, Aizawa groaned. I have dry eye. He released Bakugo. By the way, Aizawa said, turning off the hologram. The expulsion thing was a lie. Silence. Huh? The class screamed. It was a logical ruse, Aizawa said, turning to walk away. To draw out the upper limits of your potential. I knew it. Yaoyorozu sighed, clutching her chest. It was obviously a pedagogical technique. Izuku narrowed his eyes. He watched Aizawa walking away. He's lying, Izuku realized. He smells like deception. He would have done it. If I had been last, he would have cut me. Aizawa paused. He looked back over his shoulder. Midoriya. Izuku looked up. Take your paperwork to the nurse. You fractured your finger on that throw. Izuku looked down at his right index finger. It was purple and swollen. The force of the 800-meter throw had been too much for even his dense bones to handle without brace support. Snap. Izuku grabbed the finger and jerked it. The bone reset. It's already healing, Izuku said. Aizawa stared at him for a beat longer. Right. Dismissed. The walk home. The class walked back to the main building. The atmosphere had changed. Before, Izuku was a scary unknown. Now, he was the guy who beat the teacher at his own game. Midoriya! That was amazing! Uraraka cheered, running up to him. You were like whoosh and the ball was gone. Ida walked beside them. Indeed. Your physical prowess is undeniable. Although your attitude toward the instructors is concerning. Man, you're so manly! Kirishima slapped Izuku on the back. Izuku didn't flinch. Kirishima's hand hurt from hitting the rock-hard muscle. I'm Eijiro Kirishima. Let's train together sometime. Izuku looked at them. The rabbit, the robot, and the shark. He sighed. Fine, Izuku grunted. But I don't wait for stragglers. We'll keep up. Uraraka promised. Bakugo walked 20 feet behind them, his hands in his pockets, his head down. He was fuming. The smell of burning caramel was overpowering. Izuku stopped. He turned around. Katsuki? Bakugo stopped. He looked up, eyes burning with hate. You're falling behind, Izuku said calmly. It wasn't a taunt. It was an observation. Shut up. Bakugo roared. I'm just getting started. I'll crush you. I'll crush all of you. He stormed off toward the station. Izuku watched him go. He's going to be a problem, Ida noted. He's scared, Izuku said. Scared? Uraraka asked. Bakugo? He looks furious. Anger is a shield, Izuku said, adjusting his backpack strap. He used to be the big fish in a small pond. Now he's in the ocean. And he just realized he's not a shark. Izuku smiled, his canines glinting. He's just bait. Izuku turned and walked toward the gate. Day 1 complete, he thought. I established dominance. I tested the limits. I found the threats. He touched the scar on his cheek. This is going to be fun.